The Irish actor Cillian Murphy stars in the film Steve, which takes place over a very hectic 24 hours at a last chance reform school in the mid 1990s. And it's premiering at the Toronto International Film Festival. And I'm so happy to say that Cillian Murphy joins me now. How are you?
I'm okay. How are you?
Congratulations on the film. I really loved it.
Thank you.
You've worked with Max Porter. So the movie is based on Shy, the novel by Max Porter.
Yeah.
And you've worked with him before.
Yeah, this is our third collaboration. We did an adaptation of his first novel, Grief is the Thing with Feathers, for the stage. And then we made a short film together for the Manchester International Festival. And we were just really good friends. We have a great connection. We talk a lot. We had made small things like these, which I think we talked about before. Yeah. And then after that, we kind of wanted to keep the team relatively the same and try and make another piece of work. And I was talking to Max about this, and then we kind of hit upon this idea of, because I had read Shy when it came out in proof, and I was blown away by it, but I thought, well, this is unfilmable, and Max thought it was unfilmable.
Why?
Because it's all written from the first person perspective of Shy, the character.
Who's one of the, I should say for people, one of the kids in the reform school.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it's a kind of an inner monologue, and it just felt like, I think when books achieve that successfully, you think, why would you mess with it? Because but then Max figured out how to kind of spin it on its axis and tell it through the point of view of Steve, who's the head teacher, who's like a tiny character in the novel. He has like 2 lines or 2 sentences, and then show it to kind of tell the story through his eyes, but give kind of equal weight, if possible, to Shy's story and Steve's story. And they're kind of overlapping, and they're both damaged and broken. It all happens over like 24 hours, and they're kind of trying to reach each other over the course of the day, and they can't.
You're not alone, Shy. That's the whole point.
So you play Steve, you play the sort of frenzied and exhausted and struggling head of this reform school. And I heard you say something like it was like exposing and terrifying, one of the most exposing and terrifying characters I've ever played.
Actors like to exaggerate.
That was my next question.
No, I think what I was trying to get at was so myself and Max are very good friends, and he knows how I kind of talk, and he knows me very well, and he knows how I am. So there was no accent, no like costume, no changing your physique. Really, it was just a matter of like being exhausted, really, and just tired, and so. I was very I love kind of losing myself in like prep and research and all that, and it wasn't really necessary for this. So you don't have that sort of armor to put on, which is like, well, I've read all these books and I've done all this work and that's all left behind, which is a good thing, but it's also slightly. It's like you don't have your parachute a little bit when you jump off the plane.
I would think that acting as yourself would be much easier. I would think that the harder thing to do would be put on a big costume and the hat and and the beard and be Lincoln and that whole thing, because you're just playing a character. To like be with your own accent and to speak the way you speak, that's actually much more exhausting.
Yeah, it was. It was, I suppose, because it's more exposing and. It's kind of it's bespoke written for you. So I suppose you're like, is this my neuroses or the character's neuroses? Is this what am I actually portraying now? Do I feel this as a character? The lines become a little blurred, whereas other characters that are a great distance from you, you can very much delineate what is you and what is the character. Whereas this was a little more like fuzzy. And then also I didn't really need to go and shadow a teacher for a term. Or my parents are both retired teachers. My grandfather was a teacher, a headmaster, in fact, and all my aunts and uncles are teachers. And I felt like I had seen both sides of that as a kid in school, like everybody does, and then also, but as a kid who was the parent the child of teachers and who sees the aftermath of what it's like to come home and live with that and raise your own teenagers after being in front of 35 teenagers. And I also had one of those great teachers in school who really opened up the world of poetry and literature and theatre to me.
Who was that?
He's a man called Bill Wall, who's like he's retired now, but he's a novelist and a poet. And he was very important to me when I was like 15 or 14, 15 and all the way. And so, like all of those things that we talk about when we talk about teachers, which is the inspiring one and then the one that, who was annoying or the one that... And I was also the kind of probably the really irritating kid in class as well. So I felt like I didn't have to do that research.
So you were, let me just say me too on that. Like my parents are teachers. My mother was one of those teachers that we couldn't walk through the mall without people stopping her and saying, "Oh, you changed everything for me,"
Right.
and like because her job was to work with students who were going to drop out, and they would be sent to her, and she would try to work with them and stop them from dropping out.
So
your meaning is incredible, and it
Yeah.
was beautiful. And then became an English teacher and one of these inspiring people. So I saw both sides of it,
Yeah.
and I saw them have to deal with me exhausted at the end of the day.
Yeah.
I get it.
Yeah.
I can't believe. And so there was something interesting for you about this, about showing the sort of the exhaustion and the care of a teacher who's just trying to make children's lives better, even when they're really hard kids.
That's it, and trying to connect and trying not to judge and trying to see beyond, particularly, boys at that age and kind of boys who were very challenging, who were probably damaged, and these are boys who are all excluded from mainstream schools, so they find themselves in this school. Please tell me it's not all right to be out here at like breakfast time getting fully baked.
Oh, this?
Yeah.
What are you doing?
No, dark. Yeah. It's quite hard, isn't it?
It's hard. Yeah, it's so hard.
Well, I prefer when it gets a bit more, when it's spacier and the
Spicy.
synths and all that.
Love it.
What was interesting to you about these sort of last chance reform schools?
Well, dramatically, it's very interesting because they're all huge characters. You know what I mean? So you're populating this world with these big kind of characters, and we wanted to give life to all of these kids. And there's not that many of them. There's about 10 or 11 kids in the school. But like it's happening today, like a lot of the kids that get excluded, certainly in like the UK and Ireland, they're kids that have ADHD or they're kids that have autism or the kids that have problems, they get excluded. And then it's, they can't find, there's nowhere for them to actually be educated. So they're being self-educated or educated at home, and it's a very difficult place, but then you have, and we like that community of people that devote their lives to trying to reach these kids, like your mum, that's I don't know how often you see that community represented on screen. And when Max was touring his book and doing book tours, and he didn't just tour the book and like sign it, and Max would act out the whole novel for people who came to see him, and he said, like, a lot of teachers came up to him and said, that's the first time I've kind of felt that's my life, or that you were talking about somebody like me. And you feel a responsibility to that community, really.
You feel as an actor like, I'm just going to say it back to make sure I understand it, is that, these are not people who are shown on television or film in an awful lot. These people who the teachers have to deal with them in their sort of last minutes, and they're really, really, really hard kids. And you felt a certain amount of responsibility there to get it right, to represent them, to do good by them.
I think so. And also what's key here is that this teacher is not by any means exceptional. He's got really difficult problems that he can't resolve, and he's slipping hour by hour, minute by minute, and you know what I mean? He's in this position of responsibility, yet he really probably shouldn't be at this stage in his life. And, it's that classic thing, how can you help somebody else if you can't help yourself? If you can't fix yourself, how can you fix somebody else if you can't fix yourself? And so we're not trying to like deify him or make him a superhero or anything. He's just an overworked, overstressed, underpaid teacher. carer who really, really believes in it, but is struggling.
I was reading a conversation between you and Max, the novelist behind and the writer of the script as well.
Yeah.
And you touched on a little bit that that the novel and the film made you think about conversations you have with your own children.
Yeah.
Obviously, I wouldn't get you to tell me anything too personal here, but can you talk to me a little bit about that? Like you have boys yourself, and these are, in addition to this being about teachers, I was thinking a lot about just the challenges facing young men. Did it make you think about that in terms of your own relationship with the way you talk to your boys, or you were talked to?
Yeah, I mean, my boys are now finished school, which is kind of a remarkable thing to say, but they're, for me and my wife, but they're like 18 and 20, and Max has 3 boys who are still in school, so we are the fathers of boys, which is another thing we have in common. But yeah, I mean, suppose you what this school is trying to, the philosophy behind the school is that it's trying to, like, instead of it being that sort of that punitive approach, or like, it's about trying to connect with them and like trying to find the individual inside the kid in the hoodie standing at the street corner, like, you know what I mean?
Fighting people.
And othering them as the problem, and they are the problem of rather than trying to connect with. It's about all of those things that I believe are much more holistic way of approaching it, rather than the simplistic way of like, right, lock them away, or like, or other them, or whatever. So like that's kind of, I suppose, the thing that we were talking about. And Max is one of those writers like that. He mentors a lot of kids. He goes into prisons and he does like extensive workshops, and he doesn't just talk the talk, he walks the, you know what I mean? He follows through in everything that and then everything that he espouses. So I have a huge admiration for him as a human being as well as a writer.
And you two would end up talking about it. You two would end up talking about boys and young men. And,
I mean, we have silly, stupid conversations that we're sending each other music and we were laughing all the time. But then we tend to go deep on stuff and talk about it, because it's a crazy time, and raising boys in this world is a kind of a crazy thing, and it's a very challenging thing. And so, and he wrote a trilogy of novels about like boyhood. So Grooves' The Thing with Feathers, Lanny, and Shy, and they're all about sort of boyhood.
Talked about the documentary crew in this. When the documentary crew show up at the beginning of the film, they're making this documentary about the Reform School, and you get the feeling that they're going to be very charitable, and they seem to have sold it to the staff there as, we're going to make this very charitable, lovely thing about the great work you're doing here. And very quickly, it's clear that is this a liability? Should we be funding this thing? And there's sort of talk about the function of the documentary crew in this.
For Tim, the director, was a really useful device, because it allowed you to break the fourth wall and go straight into like interviews. So he's a documentary maker himself. That's his past. Tim Mealans, the director. So he was like, okay, if I was making a documentary about this school, how would I do it? And he says, okay, I'd interview all the key players and all of the teachers, all of the students. So we then started to think, okay, if we structure it around those interviews, and we can go, the pupils and the teachers can then just actually bare their souls. It's a wonderful narrative device that you don't it would be incredibly expositional if you were to do it conventionally in a film, right?
Sure.
So we managed to use that. Then what they're trying to do, I think, is to go, it's not very interesting to make a documentary where these people everything is working. It's much easier to go for the sensationalist view that these kids are like, the cops are called here all the time, and this is where your taxpayers' money is going. So they take an angle on it, which I think happens quite a lot, because it's much more interesting television.
Well, I wondered about that with you. I'll throw something at you that I was thinking about with you when I was watching that part of the documentary, and since when I was getting ready to talk to you.
Yeah.
And after we had a lovely chat last time, and I really enjoyed talking to you.
Yeah.
And then I was getting all these notes that like, oh, that was fun with Cillian. Notoriously press-averse, or like does not like talking about his art, or does not like talking about this and that and this, and and it doesn't really like doing too much work around the film. We'll kind of do what he has to do. And I suppose when I was watching the documentary, I was thinking about how they take this very complex, beautiful thing, like trying to save children, it's hard. You're struggling. You're also helping, and you're wonderful. It also there's questions around whether it should be shut down. Like these all things, and they sort of flatten it into a. They take this beautiful complex thing and they flatten it into a story, a narrative. Does some of that relate to your own? And you don't have to answer this really. Your own recalcitrance or reluctance around doing too much press around your films because you're worried that it'll flatten it. It'll take this beautiful thing that you made, this complex thing that you made, and it'll flatten it.
It's an interesting. Yeah,
you can walk out if you want. It'd be good for me.
No, it's the way that media is going. Things are more easily digested nowadays when they're compressed or reduced, and that's inevitable. And
sure,
and also there's a great appetite for everything to be explained, which I think for artists is quite frustrating because a lot of the time you don't quite know what the hell you're doing or what you're doing, why you're doing it, or it's just an impulse and. Like there's a whole bit at the end of this film that we don't need to get into, but it's incredibly ambiguous, and I don't have the answer for it.
Hold on, let me just get
I don't know what it's. And I don't want to be telling people. We want to ask the questions, but not give the answers. And there seems I understand it's the way things are packaged and presented to people nowadays that they have to be more digestible or they have to be scrollable or whatever. So that could be frustrating if you spent months and months and months and months of your life making something.
And so it might explain why sometimes you're like, hey, I don't really want to get into the answers around these things. I don't really want to get into the stories behind these things. I don't really want to get into the making of this thing. I don't want this thing to be flattened down. I want it to be rich in its sort of complexity.
Yeah, and it's different to every single person. It shouldn't be one. It'll be different things to different people. I hope, I don't want to tell people how to feel about the piece. I like talking around it. Like I enjoy the conversation more kind of generally about it, but I don't ever want to tell people what they should feel about it,
One thing I found interesting is that this is the second film under your production company, the Big Things Films. The first one was Small Things Like These, which we talked about. There are two films about someone trying to protect young people who have been outcast by society. Two normal people trying to protect people who are young kids who have been outcast by society. What draws you to that kind of story?
Yeah, I actually don't know. I think that might be coincidental.
Go away. Go away.
I genuinely, I just think they're.
I don't think I've ever said "go away" like that to anybody on the show before.
So Irish.
I know. But go away. Go on. Two films about You can see how I got there by,
I can, and I understand, and I suppose I haven't really thought about it too much myself. But
I'll give you a minute if you want.
No, it's fine. I just think that is characters under pressure, characters trying and failing to do the right thing. Like, if you take the example of Small Things Like These and the ending of it, which is a massive spoiler, but the ending of it when he brings the girl back to the house, I think that's probably for that time, it's a catastrophic mistake in many people's eyes. It'll probably mean the end of his business, the end of his marriage. She'll be taken back. He'll be. Society will shun him. So, it may appear like a heroic thing, and similarly in this story, he's Steve is desperately trying to reach this kid, but he actually selfishly can't in many ways because he's letting this addiction and this desperation overtake him when he should really be putting these kids first. And so I like the impulse to do the right thing, but not quite thinking it through or not quite achieving it and then failing at it, because I think that's very human.
I think you like the complexity around decisions that can be seen as heroic. Like, we both had teachers. We both grew up with parents as teachers who were, to their students were, God. There was gods or wonderful. They helped them out so much. And then, my parents were amazing, but also, I came home and I saw them exhausted at the end of the day, and I saw the toll on it.
Yeah.
And throughout this conversation today, I've heard, whenever it has been, you have sort of caught me boiling things down to like, you're telling their story. You're like, well, yeah, we're telling their story, but we're also trying to show, like, we make this kind of film. We're showing them as lovely people, but hey, this also has a struggling. This guy has an alcohol problem. This guy has a problem.
Yeah.
What you're telling me is that you're interested in people who seem like heroes, but there's an actual complexity and nuance behind them.
Yeah, and a deep sort of maybe contradiction or flaw, because I find that we all have that. And when I see a piece of art or read a book or read a novel that is very honest about that, it just, I feel like, no, that's truth, rather than these perfect people or like, people that are indestructible or whatever. Like, I just find, like, when it's about the human condition, then it's way more appealing.
You said in an interview, I don't think the film is finished until the audience sees it.
Yeah.
What does that mean?
It's for the audience. Like, that's what we're making it for. We're not making it for ourselves. And again, that, to go back to your question about, I've lost my train of thought.
I tend to do that because I'm so good looking. People get lost in my eyes. I think you're going to say that I got in terms of everything is digestible and everything is, we try to sell these things out, that ultimately these things have to be seen by people.
They have to be seen by people, and people will attach their own meaning or put it through their own kind of different life experiences. And so you can never account for that. You never know how people are going to react to something. You never know what the energy is going to be like in the theatre. You know what I mean? So for me, it all, yeah. And then when the audience see it, then you go, right, now it's out. It's done.
Is that why you make stuff? Is that
for the audience? Yeah, yeah.
No, but so that they can take it in their own way. So that is that why you make stuff, so that they can feel a bunch of different things at the same time?
Yes, and now I remember what I was going to say. That's why I'm reluctant to ever prescribe a meaning, or like people say, what should people feel when they watch this? I don't know. Whatever they want,
Yeah, what should people feel whenever they want? If you tell people what you're supposed to take from this thing, it limits the ability of what they can take from it.
Exactly, yeah.
And you have probably had moments in your life where you've had a very deep, complex relationship with a piece of work.
When I was growing up, you just went to see stuff. You just bought stuff, You didn't have all the other stuff selling it to you, really, It was very much like you picked up a book, you found it at home. You went to see a film that was kind of, you only saw trailers at the cinema.
Yeah. There was no narrative. There was no article to read about it. There wasn't much. You had to seek it out.
That's it. And you'd kind of find it in that you might read a review in a paper or your dad's paper or something. But like, we just went in.
So when you're making things, you're trying to bring back, and you're talking about your work, you're trying to bring back that sense of complexity. I'm now boiling down a very, you know what I mean? I'm ironically doing that.
Yeah.
But you're trying to bring back a complexity to the work that maybe can go missing.
Well, look, it's just because I'm that age. Do you know what I mean? But people born, like my kids, for example, have a very, very different experience to it. So that's just who I am, because of when I was born.
I think it's noble that you're doing it.
Trying.
I know the last thing you're going to want me to do is call you noble. Thanks for coming in, and I really love the film.
Great, thanks. Good.
Next time we'll do it longer.
Great, love to chat.